Hi, welcome to NWOBHM Guitar Tuition. So my classic album inspection today, released 21st of May 1979, is Saxon's debut album, 45 years old today. So the main reason I'm reviewing this album is obviously Saxon, great British institution, but I believe as well this is the first new wave of British heavy metal album. Now there's a couple of counter arguments I've heard. One is that Survivors by Saxon is the first, but that, according to Wikipedia, comes out sometime in June 1979. The other issue as well, if you listen to the Survivors album by Saxon, it's actually Paul Sampson singing. It's actually kind of more bluesy. It doesn't have any of the NWOBHM-ness that Bruce Dickinson and the band bring to Head On. Bruce Dickinson does re-record some vocals for it. Obviously it's got quite a metal cover, even though it's a dodgy illustration. But either way, I believe it came out afterwards. The other argument that I've heard Martin Popoff put, that he didn't sort of say, he was kind of theorising perhaps Quart's debut album 1977 is the first NWOBHM album, which is quite an interesting sort of theory. Quartz are kind of forgotten about. Jeff Nichols was in them, who was a kind of member of Black Sabbath. I remember their albums and album covers. I think the thing with them is they don't sort of, they're a rock band, they're obviously a bit metal, but they just don't kind of feel NWOBHM-y. And I think the thing with Saxon is, although this album is quite a way off, a lot of the things we associate with NWOBHM, it's got several classic tropes, which we'll have a look at. So obviously Saxon was son of a bitch, and I think that's the first kind of key thing as well. Very lucky they were called Son of a Bitch. The original demos were Son of a Bitch. When it came to this album, the record company said, "Oh look, this name you've got isn't going to travel quite that well, we don't think." Obviously you could have SOB as like a good logo perhaps, but it's going to be a bit difficult on Top of the Pops. So call him Saxon, it gave Saxon a name that was metally, and you look at the other thing Saxon is, every single album cover I believe has that logo. So like Maiden, that Saxon logo's always slapped there in the top left right corner or straight across the middle. The only time they kind of make it too sort of quiet are on the Innocence Is No Excuse and Destiny album, which just has the S, I think. And I think actually, yes, Forever Free, there's an album cover for that where they don't kind of stick with the logo. But generally speaking, they use that logo. And it's a classic logo. The album cover, I always thought it was like Biff, and maybe the guy's modelled, he actually modelled the painting on Biff. You actually look at the album cover again, it suggests metal, but it's really bad painting actually. The proportions, I'm not an artist, the proportions, the technique. And that's another quite interesting thing, I think. I think a lot of NWOBHM album covers, sometimes you actually look at them, some are really pretty piss poor. It was recorded at Livingston Recording Studios, Barnet, London. It's only 28 minutes and 54 seconds long. It's even shorter than Van Halen albums, which is quite strange. I'm sure they would have had other tracks. Maybe they didn't. And John Verity produced it. So I think one of the points to make about this album is, I think it sounds more, I'll give you examples, I think it sounds more like Saxon than Rock and Roller does sound like Judas Priest. I think it sounds more like Saxon than Lonesome Crow sounds like Scorpions. And it's, I'd say it's kind of similar to High Voltage by AC/DC. So the original High Voltage, if you listen to that, the Australian release, AC/DC clearly finding a style. The High Voltage we get in the UK is mostly the TNT album. So it's that thing where the band's still finding the sound, but I think there's enough here, enough on here to sort of go, yeah, that DNA's there. Let's just get into the track. So it opens with Rainbow Theme going into Frozen Rainbow. They mix together. So kind of Rainbow Theme opens with the Frozen Rainbow riffage. And then it goes in, Rainbow Theme sounds like Frozen Rainbows. You're going about Frozen Rainbows. At some point it kind of merges, and then the Rainbow Theme kind of appears at the end, but it's still going about the Frozen Rainbow. Anyway, obviously lyrically, you can hear more Rainbow and Uriah Heep fantasy lyrics, which again, is something not quite right for Saxon. Saxon do working class real life lyrics, but also historical lyrics. So you can hear like the kind of mishmash in this. The band are clearly kind of listening to Rush, Uriah Heep and so on. It's kind of, it's got a little bit of concept to it. But the guitars and bass vocal are very what you'd expect from Saxon when they do this type of track. So, it's kind of in the right wheelhouse. The next track, Big Teaser, is a funny one. It's got more sort of glam rock influence on this. Interestingly enough, the reissue I've got has the Son of a Bitch demos from '78. We'll come to those. Big Teaser has a different chorus. It's basically got chord progression underneath, whereas the Big Teaser on this album has a kind of static pedal tone on the bass of the chords moving underneath, and then a stacked block harmonies. Now, stacked block harmonies, I hear you saying Saxon, and there's another thing. Clearly, perhaps John Verity suggested this. Later on other tracks, there's kind of harmonies like this, more like the Sweet or Queen, which doesn't really suit Saxon. Obviously, Biff will do vocal harmonies. So again, this track kind of feels like it's a track from maybe they've written earlier on. They're kind of trying to find the sound. And then side one finishes with Judgment Day. This one I think this one kind of feels like the most Saxon track, actually. It's got kind of bluesy riff, but Biff's lyrics are kind of about, fighting back and living your life, very kind of Biff lyrics. But it's got a kind of bluesy time change at the 12/8 at the end, which kind of predates See the Light Shining. Not that goes in that time signature, but that, that dramatic shift on See the Light Shining, which I think is a great track. So again, it's kind of an experiment in that. There's a live version of this from Donington on the reissued CD. And by that point, the band's kind of, become Wheels of Steel Saxon. It's heavy, it's faster, and it kind of fits in. So side two opens with the track, and this is the track which I think is the kind of it sets the roadmap for Saxon, and it's about driving down the road. It's Stallions of the Highway. So obviously, like highways, freeways, driving cars, essential staple of Saxon, an essential staple of NWOBHM, I think. I call it kind of USA aspiration, where it says highway. It's not like Stallions of the Motorway, Stallions of the B Road or A Road. All these bands probably at this point never been to America. They're just kind of dreaming about that. So there's that kind of slight family aspiration lyrics combined with motorbiking British style. This is a really good track. It's up tempo. It's got that great when it goes to that sort of Eddie Clark riff after the lead break. Again, the live version of this from Donington, and there's a BBC session. Both kick more ass. They both got more punch, and it would fit the BBC session version of this. Maybe even the Son of a Bitch demo would fit on the Wheels of Steel album. One thing I forgot to mention on Big Teaser, some of his vocal phrasing, he does a kind of off-key bit where you can hear a bit of Johnny Rotten. Again, there's always this big debate, did punk influence NWOBHM? And I think that the energy and the DIY of punk, found its way into NWOBHM. The bands probably weren't listening to punk, but obviously it's a big thing at the time. I just think that attitude would find its way into the waters, and you can hear it on that track. Next up is Backs to the Wall. Again, this is the other track that fits in. It's about, the cops, beating up on a youth. It's very kind of Biff lyric. Again, the riffage, the stylistic nature of the track definitely would fit on the Wheels of Steel album. Again, the Son of a Bitch demo maybe sounds better, more raucous, and it sounds even more raucous on the live version. Then you got Still Fit to Boogie. The chorus of this is a bit glam rocky, a bit sort of harmony-ish, but the kind of style of the riffing, again, when you listen to the demo and the live version, it's got a bit of that Wheels of Steelness. Remember, Saxon and one of those bands still at this point, they're quite happy to do a status quo boogie, like Freeway Mad. Still Fit to Boogie's got that, but it's maybe a bit too much on the glam rock side. Then it finishes with Militia Guard. This is the track that doesn't really work at all for me. I think all the other tracks I can enjoy listening to and have elements that work. This has got a kind of starts off with a military pipe thing. Then it goes into acoustic riff, and then what's odd about the main riff on this, it's played with kind of open chords, not power chords. So that's strange. Then it's got another kind of military bit. I don't know how much they play this live, but it's just kind of a bit of a mishmash. I think the main issue with this album is when you listen to the demo, it does sound raw, and Biff's vocals sound raw. When they've gone in the studio, it's been polished. You can hear like the guitar sounds quite isolated. So it might be in an isolation booth or something. It's got a little bit of punch, a little bit of bottom end actually, but it's just too clean. Biff's vocals are kind of too smoothed off. Then there's kind of harmonies. That's what I forgot to mention. Militia Guard does it does a kind of stacked harmony thing that the Queen were beloved of. Again, that doesn't really fit the Saxon sound. The drums haven't got any openness. They're a bit sort of closed in, and the bass is kind of a bit clanky. It doesn't have any of that big sort of warmth, 70s warmth. So yeah, it's a strange record. What would I mark out of 10? I think it's worth a 6. We had this album when I was a kid, my brother bought it. I think he bought a second-hand copy somewhere. It was just always curious album. I prefer, I mentioned Rock and Roll. If I can't really get away with Lonesome Crow, a lot of people love it, but Rock and Roll is actually an album I really enjoy listening to, because I like the songs. I think with this, I like elements of the songs. Some songs I like. Other things don't work as well. But there's enough NWOBHM here, and if you look on the, pardon me itching, if you look at remember the back picture, I think there's a key sign, and I'm just going to look at it now, but is Steve Dawson is wearing striped pants. Now that may sound innocuous, but the striped pants come from Pete Ware, UFO. Rick Savage of Def Leppard also had striped pants, as did Steve Harris, of course, and other people. And that image, I think UFO were a big influence on NWOBHM, and Judas Priest as well. Certainly with like people wearing leather jackets. On the inside back cover of the album, Saxon don't look that metal yet. They look more so on the back wheel still because they're all wearing leather jackets, but those striped pants are a real kind of totem of NWOBHM. So and that again, that does, it shows you the bands. I mean, there's not, although Sabbath and the early 70s bands were being influenced by Purple, you don't hear that as much. I always feel you hear Priest, UFO, and American bands like Montrose and Ted Nugent, particularly with the style of riffing and the type of little two-note shapes that typical NWOBHM riffs often use. Okay, so that's my sort of review of Saxon's debut album, 45 years old today. Remember, share and subscribe if you like these reviews, and I'll hopefully see you again soon. Thanks very much.